You think you've got the Civil War soldier figured out? Let me set the record straight. Every Hollywood portrayal you've seen is pure fantasy. The glory, the honor, the noble sacrifice? Forget about it. Enlisting as a Civil War soldier was essentially signing your own death warrant. And here's the kicker. Dying in combat was actually the merciful way out. For every soldier shot by the enemy, 2 more perished curled up in their own filth, their bodies ravaged by diseases so horrific that modern doctors would need therapy just from reading the medical reports. The typical Civil War soldier spent fewer than 10 days of his service actually engaged in battle. The remaining hundreds of days were spent either marching until his feet bled through disintegrating boots or lying in disease-ridden camps where typhoid, dysentery, and smallpox spread faster than campfire gossip. Approximately 2/3 of the 620,000 soldiers who died during the conflict weren't killed by bullets or bayonets. They were slaughtered by microscopic enemies their bodies never saw coming. The brutal truth? When a young man donned that uniform, whether blue or gray, he wasn't just risking death in battle. He was signing up for a daily gauntlet of survival against starvation, exposure, disease, and soul-crushing boredom that would make prison seem like a vacation. So when you remember your great-great-grandfather who fought at Gettysburg, recognize that his courage wasn't just about facing enemy fire. His true superhuman achievement was surviving everything else the war threw at him. Now ask yourself this. How long would you last if you woke up tomorrow as a Civil War soldier? Would you be among the fortunate few who made it home? Or would you join the countless thousands who died without ever seeing battle, your body dumped in an unmarked grave, your name misspelled on some forgotten roster? Let's find out together. Before we begin, if these videos help you sleep, a like or subscribe would be appreciated. Also, drop a comment with your location and current time. It's wild seeing viewers from Australia to Norway on the same video. Tonight's journey takes us to the American Civil War. But first, are you actually comfortable? Seriously, check. Pillows adjusted? Blankets in place? Because where we're headed, you'll want to be settled in properly. Your eyes snap open to complete darkness. For one disoriented moment, you think you're still in your own bed, but something feels terribly wrong. The mattress beneath you isn't memory foam. It's a thin layer of straw covering hard-packed dirt. Then the smell hits you, a nauseating cocktail of unwashed bodies, with smoke, and the sickly sweet stench of the latrine trench just 50 yards away. It's 1862. You're in a Union Army training camp outside Washington, D.C., and you've just made the worst mistake of your short life. You volunteered to fight in the Civil War. Rise and shine, ladies. A voice bellows through the darkness. Fall in for roll call in 5 minutes, or you'll be scrubbing latrines with your toothbrushes. You sit up on your bunk, your back already protesting. Around you, 30 other men groan and curse as they fumble for their clothes. Unlike your soft, warm bed back home in 2025, this wooden platform barely accommodates your body. The scratchy wool blanket provides almost no protection against the morning chill. Every muscle in your body feels stiff and sore. And this is only your first night. Jesus, this ain't what I signed up for, mutters the kid next to you, some farm boy from Ohio who can't be more than 16. In the dim lantern light hanging from the tent's center pole, you can see him shivering violently. Ma's cows sleep better than this. Here's the ironic part. He's actually one of the lucky ones. Unlike thousands of other recruits sleeping directly on frozen ground with nothing but their coats for pillows, at least you've got a tent over your head. First day of being a hero, says an older man across the tent, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Wait till you boys taste the food. That'll really make you feel special. You pull on your new uniform. Wool trousers and coat in dark blue that somehow manage to be simultaneously too baggy in some places and too tight in others. The coarse fabric feels like it's exfoliating your skin. Despite being fresh from the quartermaster, it already reeks of chemicals and stale sweat. Let me paint you a picture of these uniforms. Nothing like the tailored, perfectly fitted costumes you see in movies. The Union Army ordered uniforms in just 4 sizes: small, medium, large, and extra large. Now imagine trying to fit every body type in America into just 4 sizes. The result? Practically nobody had a uniform that actually fit properly. You spot a short, skinny guy across the tent with sleeves hanging past his fingertips and pants he has to hold up with both suspenders and a belt. Meanwhile, the burly blacksmith 2 bunks down looks like he's wearing his little brother's clothes. Jacket buttons straining across his chest, pants ending awkwardly above his ankles. Move your asses, the sergeant's voice cuts through your observations. The Union ain't paying you to admire yourselves. You stumble outside into the pre-dawn chill, joining a ragged line of fellow recruits. The training camp stretches before you, a temporary city of white canvas tents arranged in precise rows, cook-fire smoke rising as far as the eye can see. It's actually impressive in scale, like an entire town that sprouted overnight. What's not impressive? The smell. Thousands of men living in close quarters with minimal sanitation creates an odor you can practically see. The latrines are just trenches dug downwind of camp, hopefully, and bathing is an occasional luxury rather than a daily habit. Your nostrils burn with the potent mixture of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, horse manure, and the sweet-sour stench of sickness already permeating parts of the camp. Name? Barks a tired-looking officer with a clipboard. You give your name, and he checks it off without even looking at you. To him, you're just another body, another future statistic. Company K, 140th Regiment, he says, pointing you toward a group of equally bewildered-looking men. You join them just as sunlight begins peeking over the horizon, casting long shadows across camp. The day begins, and with it, your first real taste of Army life. All right, you sorry lot. A weathered sergeant addresses your group, his face like tanned leather creased by sun and hardship. Today you learn how to be soldiers. Most of you won't be worth a damn for weeks, but we don't have weeks. The Rebs aren't waiting for you to get comfortable. He walks down the line, inspecting each of you like livestock at auction. Forget everything you think you know about war, he continues. It ain't glorious. It ain't quick. And it sure as hell ain't fair. Your job is simple. Do exactly what I say, exactly when I say it. That's how you stay alive. The man next to you whispers, "My pa said we'd whip the Rebs in a month and be home for harvest." The sergeant's hearing proves sharper than expected. He stops directly in front of the whisperer, their noses almost touching. "Your pa ever been to war, boy?" he asks in a dangerously soft voice. No, Sergeant," the recruit stammers. "Then your pa doesn't know shit," the sergeant replies. "None of you do, but you'll learn, those of you that live anyway." With that cheerful introduction, your training begins. The next few hours become a blur of marching drills, left foot, right foot, about face. The sergeant screams corrections at anyone who missteps, which is nearly everyone. Your shoulders ache from holding your rifle at the proper angle. Your feet throb in boots that weren't made for your specific feet because in the 1860s, there's no such thing as left and right shoes. Both boots are identical, only taking shape after weeks of painful breaking in. Wait, you didn't know that? Yeah, Civil War soldiers' boots were completely symmetrical. Imagine wearing 2 left shoes, except they're actually neither left nor right, made of stiff leather with wooden soles and 0 cushioning. By the end of your first training day, you'll have blisters on top of blisters. By mid-morning, your stomach growls loudly. Breakfast consisted of coffee so bitter it made your eyes water and a rock-hard square of what the others called hardtack, a simple flour and water cracker capable of breaking teeth if bitten directly. You watched in disgust as veterans softened theirs in coffee or crumbled it into tin cups. "Don't complain," an older volunteer told you, noticing your expression. "Wait till we're in the field and that hardtack's got worms in it. Then you'll really have something to whine about." "Worms?" you asked, hoping he was joking. "Weevils," he explained with a grim smile. "Little bugs that live in the flour. After a few weeks, they hatch. Hardtack gets so infested sometimes that it moves on its own." He laughed at your horrified expression. "Extra protein, son. You'll learn to be grateful for it when your belly's empty enough." Now, as the sun climbs higher, you begin understanding what real training means. It's not just learning to march or fire a rifle. Now, as the sun climbs higher, you begin to understand what real training means. It's not just learning to march or fire a rifle. It's learning to function while your body screams for rest. It's ignoring the blisters forming on your feet, the sweat soaking through your wool uniform in the rising heat, the thirst parching your throat as water becomes a carefully rationed commodity. You think this is hard? The sergeant barks as several recruits begin lagging behind. Wait till you're marching 20 miles a day with full pack in Virginia summer heat. Wait till you haven't slept in 3 days because the Rebs keep probing your lines. This is a Sunday stroll compared to what's coming. The morning drags on in an endless cycle of marching, forming lines, presenting arms, and marching again. By noon, your arms feel like lead weights, and every muscle in your legs trembles with exhaustion. The woolly uniform that seemed merely uncomfortable at dawn has become a personal torture device, trapping heat against your skin until you're practically marinating in your own sweat. But the real shock comes when training pauses for the midday meal. Dinner, someone calls, sparking a rush toward the cook fires. You join the line with tin plate and cup in hand, hoping for something substantial after the morning's exertion. What you get is a ladle of greasy salt pork swimming in its own fat, another piece of rock-hard hardtack, and more of that bitter coffee. This, you're learning, is the standard fare of a Union soldier. Monotonous, barely nutritious, and utterly unappetizing. Better get used to it, says the Ohio farm boy as he sits beside you, his face red from exertion and sunburn. My brother wrote from the front that sometimes this is all they get for days. When they're lucky, they find a farm and requisition some fresh food. Requisition, you ask, trying to choke down the salt pork that tastes like boiled leather in salt water. Steal, he clarifies with a small smile. Though don't let the officers hear you call it that. As you force yourself to eat the unappetizing meal, knowing you'll need the energy for afternoon training, you overhear snippets of conversation from the men around you. They're from all walks of life: farmers, clerks, blacksmiths, factory workers. Some are immigrants who barely speak English. Others come from families that have been in America for generations. All thought they knew what they were signing up for. All are realizing, like you, how wrong they were. My wife's going to have the baby before I even see battle, a young man says, his voice mixing pride with sadness. Better hope we're home by then, his companion replies. My cousin joined up last year. Said they promised it'd be over in 3 months. He's still in Virginia, and half his company's dead from camp fever. Camp fever, you asked before thinking better of it. The men look at you like the fresh fish you are. Typhoid, one explains, runs through camps like wildfire. That or dysentery, men dropping dead without ever seeing a rebel. My uncle was at Bull Run, another recruit adds. Said more men in his company died from sickness than bullets. Said you'd see a man healthy at breakfast and being buried by supper. A chill runs through you despite the midday heat. You hadn't considered this aspect of war, the invisible enemies that kill more effectively than any Confederate sharpshooter. The conversation gets cut short as sergeants start bellowing for afternoon formation. With a groan, you rise to your feet, muscles protesting violently, and rejoin your company. The morning was just a warm-up, it seems, as the afternoon brings more intense drills. You learn the basics of loading and firing your rifle, a complex multi-step process that needs to become second nature. Bite the cartridge, pour the powder, ram the ball, place the cap, aim, fire. Under ideal conditions, a good soldier might get off 3 shots in a minute. Under battle conditions, with smoke obscuring vision and fear pumping through veins, most men manage far fewer. Too slow, the sergeant shouts as you fumble with a percussion cap. Every second you waste is another second for a Reb to put a ball through your skull. By late afternoon, your hands are blackened with gunpowder, your shoulders ache from the rifle's recoil, and your ears ring from repeated firing. When the bugle finally signals the end of training for the day, you nearly collapse with relief. But the day isn't over yet. There are still chores, wood to gather for fires, equipment to clean, letters to write home while daylight remains. The camp buzzes with activity as thousands of men perform these evening rituals. You sit outside your tent rubbing sore muscles, watching the camp transform in fading light. Campfires begin twinkling across the vast expanse. There's smoke creating a haze that catches the sunset. Men gather in groups talking, playing cards, singing. In another context, it might almost seem festive. The farm boy from Ohio, you've learned his name is Thomas, sits beside you with paper and pencil. Writing to your mother? You ask. He nods, trying to figure out how to tell her about this place without worrying her. Are you going to tell her about the food? You joke. He smiles faintly. No, she'd be on the next train with a basket of fried chicken and cornbread. His smile fades. I'm not telling her about the sickness either, or what the sergeant said about our chances. You're both quiet for a moment, listening to camp sounds, men's voices, occasional laughter, the strains of a fiddle somewhere in the distance. Why'd you join up? Thomas asks suddenly. It's a question you've been asking yourself all day. In this moment, with your body aching and war's realities sinking in, the patriotic fervor that supposedly drove men to enlist seems distant and naive. Seemed like the right thing to do, you answer vaguely. He nods as if that makes perfect sense. I couldn't stay on the farm while other men were fighting. Wouldn't be right. He looks down at his half-written letter. Though I'm starting to think Pa was right about waiting for the draft. Might have had a few more months of Ma's cooking. As darkness falls completely, the bugle sounds again. Time for evening roll call, then sleep. You rise stiffly, already dreading another night on the hard bunk, another dawn of training. The sergeant moves down the line checking names, making sure no one has deserted after their first taste of Army life. When finished, he addresses the company. You all did passably today, he says, which seems like high praise from him. Remember what you learned. Practice your drills. Rest well. Tomorrow will be harder. With that cheerful thought, you're dismissed to your tents. As you lie on your bunk staring up at the canvas ceiling, listening to men settling in around you, reality truly begins sinking in. This is your life now. The hard bunk, terrible food, exhausting training. And you haven't even left camp yet. Ahead lies the march to the front, the terror of battle, the risk of wounds and disease. The comfortable bed you woke up in this morning back in your real life seems like a distant dream. Thomas is already snoring softly beside you, his body too exhausted to stay awake despite the discomfort. Others whisper, play quiet card games by lantern light, write one more paragraph to loved ones. You close your eyes, trying to find a position that doesn't press on a new bruise or sore muscle. Tomorrow will come all too soon with its bugle call, shouting sergeants, and endless drills. But for now, in this brief moment of rest, you wonder, will you be one who survives this war? Or will you become just another statistic, another name on a regiment's casualty list? As sleep finally begins claiming you, one thing becomes abundantly clear. Survival here isn't just about avoiding enemy bullets. It's about enduring day after day, hardship after hardship. The true test of a Civil War soldier wasn't just courage in battle. It was the grim determination to keep going when every part of you wanted to give up. And tomorrow, your real test begins. The bugle tears through your dreams like a bayonet. Your body physically hurts from yesterday's drills, but there's no time to ease into wakefulness. The sergeant is already barking orders before your eyes fully open. On your feet, you miserable excuses for soldiers, already wasting daylight while you're lying there like pampered house cats. It's your second day in camp, and your muscles scream in protest as you roll off the hard bunk. The kid next to you, Thomas, you remember, looks even worse. His hands are blistered from yesterday's rifle drills, and his face is sunburned to a painful-looking red. I can't feel my legs, he mutters, wincing as he pulls on his boots. Better numb than gone, replies an older volunteer already dressed and rolling his blanket with practiced efficiency. My cousin lost both his at Shiloh. Grape shot. Said he felt them burn for weeks after they were buried somewhere in Tennessee. And that's your good morning greeting in the Union Army. You stumble outside, blinking in harsh dawn light. The camp is already alive with activity. Thousands of men performing morning routines with varying degrees of efficiency. Smoke rises from hundreds of cooking fires as company cooks prepare the morning meal, if you can call it that. Fall in for roll call, the sergeant shouts, and you join the ragged line forming in front of your tent. Names are called, Response is given. 2 men from another company are missing, deserted in the night. Someone whispers. You're not entirely surprised. After just 1 day, the romantic notion of soldiering has given way to harsh reality, and you haven't even faced combat yet. After roll call comes breakfast, that bitter black coffee again, another piece of hardtack, and a thin slice of salt pork that's more fat than meat. You watch veterans soften their hardtack in coffee and follow suit. It's still barely edible, but at least now it won't break your teeth. First day wasn't so bad, was it? Asks a soldier sitting next to you. He's older than most, maybe in his 30s, with a thick beard and knowing eyes. Name's Miller. Been in since '61. Not what I expected, you admit, trying to chew a particularly stubborn piece of hardtack. Miller laughs. None of us expected this. We all thought we'd march off to one big battle, whip the rebs, and be home by Christmas. He sips his coffee, grimacing at the taste. That was 2 Christmases ago. How do you stand it? You ask before stopping yourself. Miller considers this, scratching his beard. You get used to some things. The food never gets better, though. Here's a tip. Save some of that salt pork fat. It's good for greasing your boots and rifle. Keeps them from rusting. You look down at the greasy mess on your plate with new appreciation. It's not just bad food, it's multi-purpose bad food. The morning brings more drills, but today there's a new element. Working as a unit. Your company forms lines, practices marching in formation, learns battlefield maneuvers. The importance becomes clear quickly. In battle's chaos, these formations are your lifeline, the only hope of functioning amid smoke and terror. Tighten that line. The sergeant bellows as your company attempts to march in step. In battle, a gap in the line is where the enemy breaks through. A gap in the line means dead men. By mid-morning, sweat pours down your face. The wool uniform that seemed merely uncomfortable yesterday is now a personal torture device. It's like wearing a blanket in a steam room. Coarse fabric chafing wherever it touches, soaked with sweat everywhere else. Wool uniforms in summer, mutters the man next to you during a brief water break. Whoever thought of that never had to wear one. The blue shows the blood less, replies another soldier. Trust me, that matters more than you think. Not the most comforting thought as you gulp down warm water from your canteen. You've already drained half of it, a rookie mistake. Now you'll have to ration what remains as your mouth grows drier with each dusty step. After morning drills, your company is assigned to fatigue duty. Endless chores keeping the military camp functioning. Today it's latrine duty. Your task? Digging new trenches for camp toilets. Let me paint you a picture of Civil War sanitation, because it's not what you're imagining. The latrines are just long trenches dug about 100 yards downwind of camp. No buildings, no privacy, just trenches with logs laid across them for soldiers to sit on. When a trench fills up, it's covered with dirt, and a new one is dug. Rebs can smell our camp before they see it. Jokes one veteran as you dig. Might as well send up a flag saying Yankees here. The stench is horrific, especially in growing heat. Several men vomit while digging, which only adds to the miasma. You breathe through your mouth, trying not to gag, focusing on the mechanical motion, shovel into earth, dirt into pile. You know what the real killer in this army is? Miller asks as he digs beside you. When you shake your head, he points to the trenches. This right here. Typhoid, dysentery, cholera. They kill more of us than rebel bullets. Men drinking downstream from where other men are. It's a wonder any of us are still alive. You look at your dirty hands holding the shovel. Think about the food you ate this morning prepared by men with equally dirty hands. Suddenly combat deaths seem almost merciful compared to slow death by disease. By noon you're back at the company street, the space between tent rows serving as your unit's gathering place. The afternoon is devoted to weapons training, learning to clean and maintain your rifle. This at least seems practical, though maintaining a Civil War-era firearm proves far more complex than imagined. Your rifle is your wife now, the sergeant explains, pacing before the company. You care for it better than you care for yourself. You clean it when it's dirty, oil it when it's dry, protect it from rain and mud. Because when the shooting starts, a fouled rifle is a death sentence. Yours. The process is meticulous. Each part must be cleaned, oiled, and inspected. The slightest rust or debris could cause a misfire at the critical moment. As you work, Miller shows you unofficial tricks. How to use coffee to clean the barrel when supplies run out. How to tell if percussion caps are still good. How a cork stopper can keep moisture out during rainy marches. Learned all this the hard way, he says, demonstrating how to properly fold a cleaning patch. First battle I was in, my rifle misfired 3 times. Thought I was going to die with a useless piece of iron in my hands. As afternoon wears on, you notice a commotion at camp's edge. A wagon has arrived, surrounded by excited men. Mail call, someone shouts, sparking an immediate rush toward the wagon. The company clerk stands with a stack of letters calling names. When yours isn't called, you feel surprising disappointment, though logically there's been no time for mail to reach you. Thomas, however, receives a thick envelope that makes his face light up. From Ma, he says, clutching it like treasure. Probably wrote it before I even left home. Mail, you're quickly learning, isn't just communication, it's a lifeline. You see how men's faces transform when their names are called, how they retreat to private corners to devour words from home. The lucky ones share cookies, dried fruit, or other treats sent by loving families. The unlucky ones stare at the ground, trying to hide disappointment. One soldier tears open his letter, reads the first few lines, and his face crumples. He walks away quickly, trying to hide tears. Bad news, Miller explains quietly. Happens all the time. Life doesn't stop while we're away. People get sick. Farms fail. Wives find other men. Some days I think the mail wagon brings more misery than the battlefield. After mail call comes another round of drilling, then evening mess. Beans today, a welcome change from salt pork, though they're undercooked and bland. As sun begins setting, you finally have your first real free time since arriving. Some men write letters hunched over makeshift desks. Others play cards using hardtack crumbs as poker chips. A fiddle starts up somewhere down the company street, and a small group forms singing songs from home. You sit outside your tent, muscles aching, watching camp settle into evening rhythms. Despite discomfort and dreariness, there's something fascinating about this temporary city of men. Every state in the Union represented, every trade and profession, every walk of life. Ohio boys are organizing a baseball game tomorrow if we don't march, Thomas says, sitting beside you. Do you play? Before you can answer, shouting erupts from a nearby tent. 2 men square off, fists raised, while others rush to separate them. Jenkins said Richmond would fall by August. A spectator explains to the gathering crowd. Patterson called him a damn fool optimist. The fight is quickly broken up by a corporal, both men sent to cool off on opposite sides of camp. But the incident highlights tension simmering beneath the surface, boredom, frustration, fear, all looking for an outlet. Happens every day, says Miller, who has appeared beside you. Men packed too tight with nothing but their thoughts. Bad combination. He nods toward another part of camp where soldiers cluster around a card dealer. That's why gambling's so popular. Takes your mind off things. What about the drinking I've heard about? You ask, having noticed alcohol's absence in camp. Miller snorts. Officers get their whiskey rations. Us regular folks, we make do with what we can find or smuggle in. Payday brings the sutlers with their overpriced hooch. Until then, it's this fine establishment. He gestures around at the dusty camp with mock grandeur. As darkness falls completely, men begin retiring to tents. The day's exertions make sleep come easier than last night, despite the hard bunk and itchy wool blanket. Just as you're drifting off, a commotion startles you awake, shouting, running feet. For a moment you think it's a surprise attack, but the voices sound excited rather than alarmed. New fish, someone calls. Fresh meat coming in. You follow Thomas and others outside. A column of new recruits marches into camp, looking just as you must have yesterday. Clean uniforms, uncertain faces, still carrying civilian looks despite military dress. God, were we that green? Thomas whispers. Greener, Miller replies with a chuckle. At least these poor bastards will have you to show them the ropes. The thought is startling, that after just one full day, you're already becoming a veteran compared to someone. The rate at which civilian men transform into soldiers is both disturbing and impressive. As new recruits are assigned to companies, a low rumble of thunder sounds in distance. Veterans immediately look up, faces growing serious. "Rain coming," says Miller, sniffing the air. "Better check your gear. Make sure nothing's going to get soaked." You return to your tent, securing belongings as best you can. The canvas shelter is supposedly waterproof, but older men's concern suggests otherwise. You soon learn why as first heavy drops begin falling, quickly becoming a downpour. Water immediately finds every seam and weak spot in canvas. Small leaks appear, dripping onto bunks and equipment. Outside, previously dusty paths between tents transform into mud slicks. Men rush to dig drainage ditches around tents, while others place precious items in driest corners. "Welcome to the glamorous army life," Miller jokes as he positions his cup to catch a leak directly over his bunk, "where even the sky is trying to kill you." The rain continues through night, a constant drumming on canvas, making sleep nearly impossible. By dawn, the entire camp is a quagmire of mud. Morning roll call is conducted under steadily dripping sky, soldiers standing in ankle-deep muck. Breakfast is even less appetizing than usual. Coffee watered down by rain, hardtack turning to mush. The day's training will continue regardless of weather, the sergeant informs you with obvious relish. "You think the Rebs are going to stop fighting because of a little rain?" he barks. "Weather's just another enemy to overcome." As you slosh through mud toward the drill field, Thomas slips and falls face first into a puddle. When he rises, his once blue uniform is uniformly brown from chest to knees. "Ma's going to kill me," he mutters, unsuccessfully trying to wipe away mud. "Spent 3 days sewing this uniform." "Your ma's not here," the sergeant says, overhearing. "And that mud might save your life." Shiny brass buttons make fine targets for rebel sharpshooters. The morning's drill is a special kind of misery. Rifles that must be kept dry despite rain, formations maintained in slippery mud, while uniforms growing heavier with every passing minute as they absorb water. By midday, you're soaked to the skin, chilled despite summer temperature, hands raw and wrinkled. "Could be worse," a veteran says as you all huddle under a makeshift shelter during a brief break. Winter in Virginia, now that's true misery. Mud so deep it swallows wagons whole. Men losing toes to frostbite. Give me summer rain any day. The rain finally lets up by afternoon, but damage is done. Camp is transformed into a vast mud pit. Worse, you begin hearing coughing from various tents. First sign of colds and lung ailments following every soaking. That evening, as you try to dry possessions by a smoky fire, Miller sits beside you. He's been watching you throughout the day. You realize, not just you, but all new recruits, gauging who might have what it takes to survive. 2 days in, he says. "Still glad you joined up?" You consider the question seriously. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. You're damp, dirty, and hungry despite 3 meals. You've been shouted at, worked to exhaustion, introduced to grim realities of camp disease and sanitation. And yet there's something else too, a growing sense of belonging, of shared hardship creating bonds civilian life rarely forges. When Thomas slipped in mud, 3 men immediately helped him up. When rations were distributed, veterans showed newcomers how to make the most of meager offerings. "Ask me after I've seen battle," you finally reply. Miller nods, seeming to approve. "Smart. That's when you really know." He pokes at the fire with a stick, sending sparks into darkening sky. Truth is, the fighting isn't even the hardest part for most. It's this, the waiting, the marching, the sickness. Battle at least happens fast. Camp life drags on forever. As night falls again, you settle into your damp bunk, listening to camp sounds, men coughing, quiet conversations, someone softly playing a harmonica. Your second full day as a soldier is ending, and already civilian life seems distant, almost unreal. Tomorrow, you'll learn, brings a new challenge, a practice march with full pack and equipment. The sergeants call it a little stroll of 15 miles. The veterans call it the first culling. The march that separates those who might survive from those who definitely won't. As you drift towards sleep, you wonder which group you'll fall into. Your body is already protesting abuses of just 2 days. How will it handle 15 miles with 40 pounds of gear? How will it handle months of marching? The terror of battle? In your last conscious moments, you realize something has changed since yesterday. You're no longer just an observer in this strange world of the Civil War soldier. You're becoming part of it, your body and mind adapting, however painfully, to its demands. And tomorrow will demand even more. The 15-mile march begins at dawn. Your stomach churns with a mixture of hunger and dread as you strap on your equipment. Haversack with rations, canteen, cartridge box, and most crucially, your knapsack. The veterans call it the elephant, and now you understand why. Loaded with your blanket, spare clothing, personal items, and share of company equipment, it feels like there's a small child sitting on your shoulders. Straighten those lines. The sergeant barks as your company forms up. This ain't a Sunday stroll. Show me soldiers, not schoolgirls on a picnic. The sun hasn't even cleared the trees, but already sweat trickles down your back under the wool uniform. You adjust your knapsack straps one more time, trying to find some configuration that doesn't immediately send pain shooting through your shoulders. First mile's the easiest, Miller murmurs beside you. He's transformed his knapsack somehow, added leather reinforcements to the straps, and rigged a belt that transfers some weight to his hips. 10th mile separates the men from the boys. 15th mile separates the living from the dead. The drums begin, setting the marching pace, and your company moves out. The rhythm is brisk but not punishing, about 110 steps per minute, designed to cover ground efficiently while conserving energy. In theory, anyway, the first hour isn't so bad. The morning is cool, your legs are fresh, and there's a certain pride in being part of this long blue column snaking through the countryside. Flags flutter in the breeze, officers ride alongside on horseback, and if you squint, it almost looks like those heroic paintings of armies on the march. Then reality sets in. By the second hour, the sun has climbed higher, beating down on your blue wool uniform. The dust kicked up by thousands of marching feet coats your face, clings to your sweaty skin, turns to mud in your mouth. There's no talking now. Every breath is precious, used only for the effort of putting one foot in front of the other. Water discipline. An officer calls as men begin reaching for canteens. 2 swallows every hour. We've got miles to go. You've already drained half your canteen. A rookie mistake. Now you'll have to ration what remains as your mouth grows drier with each dusty step. The third hour brings the first casualties, not from enemy fire, but from the march itself. A man collapses a dozen rows ahead, his face purple from heat exhaustion. The column parts around him like a stream around a rock. 2 men drag him to the roadside where a medical wagon will eventually collect him, if he's lucky. Eyes front, the sergeant shouts when heads turn to watch. Keep moving. Another man stumbles out of formation, vomiting into the ditch. He tries to rejoin the march, but falls again. No one stops to help. The column has its own momentum now, a beast that can't be halted for individual suffering. Happens every march. Thomas pants beside you, his face streaked with dust and sweat, his eyes glazed with fatigue. Sergeant says if you fall out once, you'll fall out again. Says some men just ain't built for soldiering. You wonder what not built for soldiering means for those men. Discharge, assignment to garrison duty, or just endless torment until they either toughen up or desert. By midday, your shoulders are on fire, raw beneath the knapsack straps. Each step sends a jolt of pain up your spine. Your feet, already blistered from previous days, now feel like they're being stabbed with each step. But you keep marching because stopping seems worse somehow. The column halts at a creek for a brief rest. Men collapse on the banks, shedding equipment, plunging faces into the cool water despite officers' warnings about disease. You ease your knapsack off with a groan, feeling blood rush back into your shoulders. Halfway there, Miller says, settling beside you. Unlike most, he seems barely winded, his movements economical, preserving energy. How are you holding up? You're too exhausted to lie. Don't think I can make another mile. Miller nods as if he expected this answer. From his haversack, he pulls out a small tin, opening it to reveal a brownish paste. Rub this on your shoulders and feet. Won't heal them, but it'll numb them enough to finish. The salve smells medicinal with hints of camphor and something herbal. What is it? You ask, gingerly applying it to your raw skin. Stuff the Indians use. Traded a rebel prisoner my pocket watch for the recipe. Miller shrugs. Man makes do. The relief is almost immediate. Not a cure, but a blessed dulling of the pain. By the time the drums signal resumption of the march, you feel like you might actually survive. The afternoon brings new challenges. The road narrows, forcing the column to compress. Now you're marching so close to the man in front that your rifle barrel is inches from his knapsack. The pace becomes uneven. Hurry up and wait, running a few steps to close gaps, then standing still for minutes while some obstruction ahead is cleared. This is how most get killed, Miller tells you during one such halt. Not by bullets, by the march. Feet swell, can't get boots off. Infection sets in. Surgeon takes the leg. Then the fever takes the man. It's a cheerful thought to accompany the final miles. The sun is low when your company finally reaches the designated campsite. You've marched 15 miles with full gear, and every part of your body registers the achievement with pain. Men collapse where they stand, too exhausted to even set up tents. No rest yet. The sergeant's voice cuts through the fatigue. Camp needs setting up before dark. Move your asses. Somehow you find the strength to help erect tents, gather firewood, and dig rudimentary latrines. The work is mechanical now, your body operating on some reserve of energy you didn't know existed. It's only when the essential tasks are complete that you're finally allowed to rest. You sink to the ground outside your tent, too tired to even remove your boots. Thomas collapses beside you, his face ashen beneath the sunburn and dirt. I can't feel my feet, he says. Is that bad? Take your boots off, Miller orders, appearing beside you. Both of you. Now, the effort is excruciating. Your boots have molded to your swollen feet, and removing them feels like peeling off a layer of skin. When they finally come free, the smell is horrific. Blood, sweat, and the beginning of infection. Miller examines Thomas's feet first, his expression grim. Trench foot starting. Lucky we're not marching tomorrow. He reaches into his haversack and pulls out a small bottle. Clean them with this, then air dry. No socks till morning. The liquid stings like fire, but you follow instructions, watching in horror as the water turns pink with blood from blisters you didn't even feel breaking. How do you know all this? You ask Miller as he checks your feet with professional detachment. 4th Regiment I've served in, he replies, applying his salve to the worst spots. First one, lost half my company to gangrene. Learn my lesson. Take care of your feet, or you won't have feet to take care of. Evening brings a new kind of misery. Having pushed your body beyond its limits, you now can't sleep despite bone-deep exhaustion. Every muscle throbs. Your shoulders feel flayed. Your feet pulse with pain. Around you, men groan, shift positions, seek comfort that doesn't exist on the hard ground. Sing something, Joe. Someone calls from the darkness, and a tenor voice begins a slow, mournful rendition of Home Sweet Home. Other voices join in, creating a haunting chorus that spreads through camp. You lie there staring at the stars, listening to hundreds of homesick men sing about the place they'd rather be. Morning comes too soon, but brings a blessed announcement, a day of rest before continuing the march. The officers call it tactical necessity. The enlisted men call it not wanting half the regiment to drop dead. You use the time to tend to your battered body. Following Miller's advice, you wash your one spare pair of socks and hang them to dry, mend a tear in your trousers, and most importantly, soak your feet in the nearby creek. The cold water brings immediate relief, though the sight of your feet is alarming, blistered, bruised, with patches of angry red where infection threatens. Around you, dozens of other men are doing the same, comparing injuries like badges of honor. Got a beauty here, says a corporal, displaying a blister the size of a silver dollar. Going to name it after my ex-wife. Painful, swollen, and full of poison. The joke earns tired laughs. Humor, you're learning, is essential currency in the army, often dark, usually profane, but vital for maintaining sanity. By midday, you feel almost human again. The rest has worked wonders, and a meal of salt beef and hardtack, while hardly appetizing, restores some energy. You've even managed to forage some wild berries from the edge of camp, a tart burst of flavor that makes the hardtack almost palatable. Mail call. The announcement sends a ripple of excitement through camp. This time, your name is called. A letter has caught up with you, forwarded from the training camp. The thin envelope feels like a treasure in your hands. You retreat to a quiet spot to read, savoring each word from home. The news is mundane. Local gossip, family updates, questions about army life, but it forms a lifeline to the world you left behind. You read it 3 times before carefully folding it into your breast pocket, close to your heart. Thomas wasn't so lucky. He hovers nearby, trying not to look disappointed. Nothing from Ma yet, he says, forcing a smile. Probably still on its way. You can share mine. You offer, and his face brightens as you read him the lighter parts of your letter. The afternoon brings more rest, but also preparation for the next day's march. Rumors swirl through camp. You're heading to Washington, or to Baltimore, or straight to Richmond to end the war in one decisive battle. No one really knows, and the officers aren't telling. Best not to know, Miller advises as you clean your rifle together. Each day has enough troubles without borrowing from tomorrow. That evening, something unexpected happens. A wagon arrives in camp bringing fresh bread, a welcome change from hardtack, and even more surprisingly, a barrel of dried apples. The sudden luxury lifts spirits throughout camp. Special treat, explains the quartermaster sergeant as he supervises distribution. General's orders. Says you boys did well on the march. The dried apples are tough and overly sweet, but after days of bland rations, they taste like the finest delicacy. Men savor each piece, trading portions of bread for extra fruit or vice versa according to preference. First rule of army life, Miller says, watching the bartering with amusement. Enjoy the good when it comes. Never lasts long. As if to prove his point, the drums beat that evening signaling assembly. Your company forms up, wondering what new demand awaits. The captain appears, his face serious. Men, our orders have changed, he announces. We march at first light, joining the main army near Culpeper. Intelligence suggests Confederate forces are massing in the area. A murmur runs through the ranks. Culpeper means Virginia. Virginia means the front lines. The front lines mean battle. Full marching order, the captain continues. 3 days rations, 60 rounds of ammunition per man. We'll cover 20 miles tomorrow, so rest well. The news transforms the camp. Men who were laughing over dried apples minutes ago are now somber, checking equipment, counting bullets, writing hasty letters home. The veterans seem particularly focused, their movements precise, almost ritualistic. Should I be worried? You ask Miller as you prepare your gear. He looks at you, his weathered face unreadable. Yes, he says finally, but not about dying. Not yet. He nods toward where Thomas sits struggling to wrap hardtack in an oilcloth. Worry about the living. Battle's coming, and it'll change that boy forever. Change all of you. The man who marches into his first battle never marches out again. Someone else comes out wearing his face. You sleep poorly that night, Miller's words echoing in your mind. Around you, the camp is restless, men whispering, praying, some crying quietly in the darkness. The morning seems to arrive almost immediately, the bugle cutting through what little sleep you manage to find. The mood is different as you form up in the pre-dawn gloom. Gone is the grousing about sore muscles and bad food. In its place is a tense silence broken only by necessary commands and the rhythmic stamp of boots as the column moves out. Today's march is faster, more purposeful. The officers push the pace, allowing fewer breaks. By noon, you've covered 12 miles. Your feet once again scream in protest, but no one falls out today. The column moves with grim determination, each man knowing what waits ahead. The countryside changes as you march south. More farms, fewer towns, increasingly hostile looks from the few civilians you encounter. Here you are invaders, not defenders. Keep an eye on your gear. Miller warns during a brief halt. Locals will steal anything not nailed down. Had a boy in my last regiment wake up with his boots gone. Marched barefoot for a week before quartermaster found replacements. As the day wears on, you begin noticing other changes. More cavalry scouts passing the column, signal officers on hilltops with flags, distant rumbles that might be thunder but probably aren't. Artillery. A veteran confirms when someone asks. Still miles off. Nothing to worry about yet. Yet. The word hangs in the air, pregnant with meaning. By late afternoon, your company joins a larger encampment, part of the Army of the Potomac. Tens of thousands of men spread across rolling fields and woodlots. The scale is staggering. Tents and wagons stretch as far as you can see. Campfires to the landscape like fallen stars. Flags of dozens of regiments flutter in the breeze. Home sweet home, Miller says as your company is directed to its assigned position, at least till the shooting starts. Setting up camp in the larger army is more orderly, more practiced. Each regiment has its place, each company its specific duties. By sundown, your small piece of the vast encampment is established, tents erected in neat rows, cooking fires burning steadily. The increased organization extends to rations as well. The company cooks have set up a proper field kitchen, and tonight's meal is almost palatable. Beans with salt pork, fresh bread from the commissary wagons, even coffee that tastes like coffee instead of boiled mud. Army runs better when it's all together, explains a corporal as you collect your portion. General staff watching everything makes the quartermaster honest and the cooks afraid of complaints. After eating, you explore the camp with Thomas, both wide-eyed at the martial city that has sprung up around you. Sutlers have established shops selling everything from tobacco to writing paper at outrageous prices. A regimental band plays near headquarters. Men gather in groups gambling, telling stories, cleaning weapons. But beneath the almost festive atmosphere, you sense tension. Veterans clean their rifles with methodical care. Officers huddle over maps. Ambulance wagons assemble in orderly rows, their purpose unmistakable. We're really going to fight, aren't we? Thomas asks as you make your way back to your company street, his voice having lost its rural twang, flattened by fatigue and apprehension. Before you can answer, a new sound cuts through the evening air, a long roll of drums, not the usual camp signals, but something more urgent. Men jump to their feet all around you. Officers shout commands that are swallowed in the sudden commotion. Fall in. Fall in by companies. Your sergeant's voice rises above the din, full equipment, double quick. What's happening? Thomas asks, his face pale as you both run toward your tent. Nighttime march, says Miller, already buckling on his cartridge box. Rebs must be closer than we thought. Within minutes, your company is formed up, each man standing rigid in line, equipment checked and ready. The captain paces before you, his face tight with concentration as he awaits orders from regiment. They come in the form of a mounted courier who speaks briefly to the captain before galloping off to the next company. The captain turns to address the men, his voice steady but serious. We're moving out immediately. Confederate forces have engaged our advanced scouts near Brandy Station. We're to reinforce the line before dawn. He pauses, scanning the faces before him. This will be a forced march through the night. No straggling, no talking. We move fast and quiet. Those are the general's orders. A ripple passes through the company. Not quite fear, but something close to it. Night marches are dangerous even without the enemy nearby. Men trip in darkness, get lost, fall into ditches. Add the prospect of battle at the end, and the risk multiplies. Check your equipment one last time. The captain continues. We move in 5 minutes. As you adjust your straps and count your cartridges, you feel a strange calm descend. After days of training, marching, and preparation, the moment is finally here. No more wondering what kind of soldier you'll be. By tomorrow, you'll know. Stay close to me, Miller tells you and Thomas, his voice low. Do exactly as I do. Don't be heroes. Don't be cowards. Just be soldiers. The drums tap softly, signaling formation. Your company takes its place in the column, and without fanfare, the night march begins. Thousands of men moving through darkness, each step bringing you closer to the moment that will define your war, your first battle. Tomorrow you'll learn if you're truly cut out to survive as a Civil War soldier. Not just the marches, the bad food, the disease, but the thing they've been preparing you for all along. The moment when other men are actively trying to kill you. As you march through the Virginia night, stars cold and distant overhead, you wonder what version of yourself will exist when the sun rises again. The night march continues for hours, a ghostly column of men moving through darkness. No talking is allowed, but the sounds of an army on the move fill the night. Thousands of boots on dirt roads, the creak of leather equipment, the occasional clink of metal against metal, and always the labored breathing of exhausted men. Your feet have gone beyond pain to a strange numbness. Your shoulders no longer register the weight of your knapsack. You've entered a dreamlike state where only the next step matters. Your world narrowed to the shadowy form of the man marching in front of you. Just before dawn, the column halts in a wooded area. Orders are passed in whispers. Shed knapsacks, keep weapons and ammunition, form battle lines. The calm efficiency of the veterans is unsettling. They don't speak, don't question, just methodically prepare for what's coming. Load your weapons, the sergeant orders, his voice barely audible. Percussion caps ready, but not set. We move in 5 minutes. Your hands shake as you tear open a paper cartridge with your teeth, the bitter taste of gunpowder filling your mouth. Pour the powder down the barrel. Ram the ball home. Place the percussion cap. Each step you've practiced hundreds of times, but never with the knowledge that these bullets might soon be fired at actual human beings. Thomas struggles beside you, dropping a cartridge in the dim light. "I can't," he whispers, his voice cracking. Miller kneels beside him, steady hands guiding Thomas through the loading process. "Just like drill," he murmurs. "Nothing different. Your hands know what to do, even if your mind doesn't." The first light of dawn filters through the trees as your company moves forward, part of a battle line stretching through the woods. You can hear distant popping sounds now, skirmishers exchanging fire somewhere ahead. Occasionally, a deeper boom suggests artillery. The company emerges from the woods into a rolling field of wheat, golden in the early light. In another context, it might be beautiful. Now it's just open ground you'll have to cross under fire. Forward march. The command passes down the line, and the company steps into the wheat, rifles at the ready. You're in the second row of the formation. Ahead of you, a lieutenant walks backward, keeping the line straight with quiet commands. Dress right. Keep your intervals. Steady pace. The distant popping grows louder. You can see smoke now hanging over a tree line about half a mile ahead. The skirmishers are falling back, running through the wheat toward your advancing line. One falls suddenly, as if he's tripped, but he doesn't get up. "Steady, boys," the sergeant calls. "Keep your line." A sound tears through the air above you, a weird shrieking whistle that ends in a solid thump as something hits the ground behind your company. Earth and wheat spray upward. "Artillery," says Miller, his voice flat. "They're ranging us." Another whistle, another explosion. This one closer. Men instinctively duck, but keep marching. The formation is still intact, still advancing at that same steady pace through the golden wheat. Then you see them, gray-clad figures emerging from the distant tree line, forming their own battle line. The enemy, real Confederate soldiers, not targets or imaginary foes from drill, but actual men with guns who want to kill you. "Company, halt." The command freezes you in place. Ready arms. You raise your rifle, suddenly aware of how exposed you are in this open field. The wheat only reaches your knees. No concealment, no protection. Aim. You settle the sights on the gray line now about 300 yards away and closing. You can't make out individual faces at this distance, just a mass of men moving toward you with deadly purpose. Fire. The company's volley crashes out, your own rifle bucking against your shoulder. Smoke immediately obscures your vision, the acrid smell of burnt powder filling your nostrils. Through the haze, you can't tell if you hit anyone. There's no time to wonder. You're already reaching for another cartridge, beginning the loading process again. "Load, load, load," the sergeant shouts, moving behind the line. Your training takes over. Tear cartridge, Pour powder, ram ball, place cap, all while trying to watch the enemy through drifting smoke, trying to ignore the whistling artillery shells that are now landing with terrifying regularity. The company fires another volley, and another. The Confederate line has halted now, returning fire. You hear the distinctive whine of mini balls passing overhead, a sound veterans described as angry bees. Some don't pass overhead, but find human targets instead. A man to your left grunts and sits down suddenly, a look of surprise on his face as blood spreads across his thigh. Close up the line, the sergeant orders, and you shuffle left, filling the gap. Time loses meaning. You're caught in a mechanical cycle. Load, aim, fire, load again. The smoke becomes so thick you can barely see the enemy, aiming more at muzzle flashes than actual targets. Your ears ring from the constant gunfire, making the sergeant's commands seem distant underwater. A new sound rises above the gunfire, a high wailing cry that sends chills down your spine. The rebel yell. The gray line is charging. Fix bayonets. The order passes down your line. Hands fumble to attach the long blades to rifle barrels. Stand fast. Stand fast. The Confederate charge closes the distance rapidly, their line emerging from the smoke like avenging ghosts. At 100 yards, your company fires a devastating volley that tears gaps in their line. At 50 yards, you fire again, the effect even more terrible at this range, but they keep coming. The final moments before impact are a blur. You fire one last desperate shot, then suddenly they're upon you. A crash of bodies, rifle barrels, bayonets. The neat formation dissolves into chaotic individual struggles. A bearded Confederate lunges at you, his bayonet missing your chest by inches. You swing your rifle like a club, connecting with his shoulder. He staggers, but doesn't fall, raising his weapon for another thrust. Miller appears beside you, driving his bayonet into the man's side. The Confederate crumples with a strange, soft cry that will haunt your dreams for years. Keep moving, Miller shouts, already turning to face another threat. Don't stand still. The hand-to-hand fighting lasts only minutes, but feels like hours. The Confederate charge falters, breaks, then reverses as more Union troops arrive to reinforce your line. The gray soldiers retreat toward the tree lean, pursued by cheering bluecoats. But not you. Your company has been ordered to hold position, to reform its shattered line. As the adrenaline fades, you become aware of the aftermath around you. Men lying in the trampled wheat, some moving, crying for help, others ominously still. The golden field is now stained red in patches. Thomas is on his knees nearby, vomiting. His face is blackened with powder, his eyes wide with shock, but he appears uninjured. Others weren't so fortunate. The company has visibly shrunk, gaps in the line where men stood just minutes ago. Check your ammunition, the sergeant orders, moving among the survivors. We're not done yet. He's right. The battle continues elsewhere. You can hear heavy firing to your left where another Union division is engaged. Artillery still thunders, though it's no longer targeting your position. Stretcher bearers move through the wheat, collecting the wounded. The rest of the day passes in a series of advances and halts, sporadic firing at distant targets, long periods of tense waiting. The major battle seems to have shifted elsewhere. Your company now a small piece in a complex chess game played across miles of Virginia countryside. By late afternoon, it's clear the Union forces have carried the day. Confederate units are withdrawing across the board, pursued cautiously by blue columns. Your company, having suffered heavily in the morning engagement, is held in reserve as fresher troops lead the pursuit. As dusk approaches, you finally have time to process what you've experienced. Your uniform is stiff with dried sweat and powder residue. Your hands are black from gunpowder. Your right shoulder bruised from rifle recoil. You fired approximately 40 rounds over the course of the day, though whether you actually hit anyone remains mercifully unknown. The company establishes a hasty camp near the morning's battlefield. There's no energy for proper tents. Most men simply drop where they're told, using knapsacks as pillows. The day's fighting has left everyone hollow-eyed and silent, the usual camp banter replaced by thousand-yard stares. Eat something, Miller advises, handing you a piece of hardtack. Doesn't matter if you're not hungry. Your body needs it. You chew mechanically, the familiar tasteless cracker now seeming even more unappetizing. Thomas sits nearby. He still hasn't spoken since the fighting. He stares at his hands as if they belong to someone else. Is he? Will he be all right? You ask Miller quietly. The veteran studies Thomas for a moment. Maybe. First battle hits everyone different. Some talk too much, some don't talk at all. Give him time. As night falls completely, you realize something has changed within you. The fear isn't gone. If anything, having seen combat, you're more afraid than before. But it's a different kind of fear, more focused, less paralyzing. You've seen the worst and survived, at least this time. Sleep comes in fits and starts, interrupted by vivid flashes of the day's fighting and the moans of wounded men in nearby field hospitals. The medical tents operate through the night, lanterns casting grotesque shadows as surgeons work tirelessly on broken bodies. Morning reveals the true cost of battle. Your company musters at dawn, the gaps in the ranks painfully obvious in daylight. The captain reads the casualty list: 12 dead, 23 wounded, 5 missing, from a company that numbered nearly 100 just days ago. These losses are significant. The names wash over you, some familiar, others just faces you can barely recall. Each represents a man who was breathing, hoping, fearing just hours ago. Now they're statistics in what the newspapers will call a sharp engagement. Not even important enough to be remembered as a major battle. We'll be moving out within the hour, the captain announces, folding the casualty list. The enemy is retreating toward Culpeper. We're to pursue and harass their rear guard. No time to bury the dead. That's left to designated burial details. No time to properly tend the wounded. They're evacuated to field hospitals miles behind the lines. The army moves on, the war machine rolling forward relentlessly. As your company prepares to march, Thomas finally speaks. I killed someone yesterday, he says, his voice barely audible. Shot him right in the face at 20 yards. Could see his expression change and everything. You don't know what to say? What words could possibly address such an experience? You did what you had to, Miller tells him, checking Thomas's rifle with practiced hands. Same as he was trying to do to you. Don't dwell on it, or you'll go mad. The march resumes. Your depleted company now part of a massive Union force flowing south like a blue river. The mood is different. No longer the nervous anticipation of men heading to their first battle, but the grim determination of soldiers who know exactly what awaits them. The pursuit lasts 3 days, a strange mirror of your earlier march, but with key differences. Now you move through landscapes transformed by war, burned farmhouses, trampled fields, hastily dug graves marking the Confederate retreat. Civilians have largely fled, leaving an eerie emptiness to the countryside. On the third day, rain begins, a steady, soaking downpour that turns roads to mud and streams to raging torrents. The pursuit slows, then halts as bridges wash out and supply wagons bog down. Your company finds itself assigned to guard a critical crossroads, watching for enemy cavalry while engineers attempt to repair a collapsed bridge. The rain continues without pause. Tents offer minimal protection as water finds every seam and weakness. The ground beneath becomes a sodden mess, forcing you to sleep sitting up against trees or rocks. Everything, clothing, blankets, food, develops a persistent moistness that breeds mildew and rot. This is why I hate Virginia, Thomas grumbles, wringing water from his socks for the 3rd time in a day. Can't make up its mind. Too cold to live, then too wet to breathe. Pick a misery and stick with it. The thaw brings one blessing. However, fresh supplies. Wagons finally reach camp, bringing not just basic rations, but actual mail, the first in nearly a month. Letters from home create a temporary lifting of spirits throughout the regiment. You receive 2 letters, one from family with news both mundane and precious. Another, surprisingly, from a neighbor's daughter who writes with unexpected warmth about her hopes for your safe return. This second letter you read privately multiple times before carefully storing it in your breast pocket, close to your heart. Jenkins receives nothing, his family having moved without leaving a forwarding address. His disappointment is palpable, a reminder of how young he truly is despite his increasing adaptation to soldier life. "You can share mine," you offer, echoing Thomas's gesture to you months earlier. "Nothing private, just news from home." The boy accepts gratefully, listening intently as you read selected passages about local events, crop conditions, community news, these mundane details of civilian life having taken on an almost mythical quality in the harsh reality of winter camp. Mid-February brings renewed cold and a fresh challenge: inspection by general officers touring winter encampments. With 3 days' notice, the regiment transforms itself from a collection of miserable, disheveled survivors into something approximating a proper military unit. Uniforms are cleaned and mended as well as possible with limited supplies. Weapons are polished to parade ground perfection. The paths between huts are tidied, latrines freshly dug and covered, horse pickets reorganized. Most impressively, the men themselves undergo metamorphosis: beards trimmed, hair cut, faces actually washed with precious heated water. All this work for some general to ride through, nod, and leave. Thomas complains as he scrubs his muddy boots with snow. Man probably sleeps in a requisition mansion with a feather bed and hot meals. The inspection itself is surprisingly brief: a collection of mounted officers moving through camp at a trot, pausing occasionally to ask perfunctory questions before continuing their tour. The regiment stands at attention in the bitter cold for over an hour, only to be viewed for perhaps 5 minutes. That's Army life, Miller says as you return to your hut, stamping feeling back into frozen feet. Hurry up and wait. Then hurry up some more for nothing. Late February brings rumors of coming action: Confederate movements across the river, Union forces repositioning, generals planning spring campaigns. The camp stirs with anticipation mixed with dread. Winter misery has a certain predictability that battle lacks. "Rather know I'm fighting cold than wonder if I'm catching a bullet tomorrow," Jenkins admits one evening, his young face serious in the firelight. The boy who arrived so eager for battle has been tempered by months of winter hardship. March arrives with warming temperatures and increasing military activity. Drilling resumes in earnest. No longer the basic maneuvers of earlier months, but complex battalion and regimental movements designed for the coming campaign season. Equipment is inspected, repaired, replaced where possible. Ammunition is distributed, weapons test-fired and adjusted. The winter beard you've grown as protection against the cold must now be shaved off to allow proper fitting of your cartridge box strap. The simple hut that sheltered you through the worst months is clean, its few accumulated comforts distributed or abandoned. "Always feels strange leaving winter quarters," Miller observes as you pack your knapsack, deciding what few personal items merit carrying into the coming campaign. Built yourself a home of sorts, now walking away from it. There's unexpected emotion in dismantling the small space that has sheltered you through months of hardship. This crude structure of logs and clay has been more than mere protection from elements. It's been the setting for a unique kind of bond formed between men who might never have met in civilian life. The night before marching orders are expected, your squad sits around the fire for a final evening in the hut. No one speaks much, each man lost in private thoughts about what the spring campaign might bring. Jenkins whittles nervously at a piece of pine. Thomas writes what might be his final letter home before moving out. Miller methodically checks his equipment, a ritual you've seen countless times. "Might be our last night altogether," Thomas finally says, voicing what everyone's thinking. "No telling who comes back from the next scrap." "Cheerful thought," you reply, trying for lightness but achieving only strained humor. Miller looks up from his equipment check. "Been through 3 winters in this army," he says. "Each spring, make new friends to replace those who didn't make it. Nature of war." He returns to his work, then adds quietly, "But I hope we all sit around a fire again come next winter." It's as close to sentimentality as you've ever heard from him, creating a moment of silence broken only by the crackling fire. "We will," Jenkins says with the simple certainty of youth. "All of us." No one contradicts him, allowing the comforting fiction to stand. In this moment, On the edge of spring and renewed warfare, such hope seems a necessary shield against the reality waiting beyond the hut's door. The bugle sounds reveille before dawn, its notes carrying a different weight than the routine morning calls of winter. This is marching reveille, the signal that the winter pause has officially ended, that the business of war resumes in earnest. You step outside into the gray pre-dawn light, knapsack packed, rifle cleaned, 60 rounds of ammunition in your cartridge box. Around you, the regiment assembles, forming into companies that seem painfully understrength after winter's toll of disease and desertion. The huts that sheltered you through months of cold stand empty now, already beginning to look abandoned, though their occupants still form ranks nearby. In a matter of hours, these carefully constructed shelters will be just another set of ruins in a landscape increasingly defined by the artifacts of war. Forward march. The command ripples down the line, and the regiment moves out, leaving winter quarters behind. No one looks back, partly from military discipline, partly from the superstition that many soldiers hold about not watching something recede that you hope to see again. The spring campaign has begun. The relative safety of winter confinement gives way to the uncertainty of active warfare. The bonds forged in that small hut will now be tested in a crucible of marching, hunger, fear, and ultimately battle. As your boots break the thin crust of frost on the road leading south, you realize something important has changed. During the winter months, you're no longer just surviving as a Civil War soldier. You've become one, fully integrated into this strange brotherhood of shared suffering and purpose. Whether that transformation will help you survive the coming campaign remains to be seen. But as the rising sun burns away the morning mist, illuminating the long blue columns stretching ahead and behind, you feel a complex emotion that contains both dread and pride. You've survived a winter in the Union Army, something thousands failed to do. Whatever comes next, that achievement can't be taken from you. The question now is what price the spring will demand for its own passage. The war doesn't end for you with a grand battle or heroic charge. It ends with a letter delivered to your regiment in early May 1865, a full month after Lee's surrender at Appomattox. Honorable discharge, the captain announces, handing you the official paper with its ornate letterhead and formal language. Medical reasons. Report to Washington for processing and final pay. You stare at the document, trying to process its meaning. After nearly 3 years of service, hundreds of miles marched, a dozen battles survived. It ends not with a bang, but with a bureaucratic whisper. The medical reason is clear enough. The lingering effects of a mini-ball that found your shoulder during the Petersburg campaign last winter. The wound wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it never properly healed, leaving your left arm weakened and prone to painful spasms. You're no longer fit for infantry service, the Army surgeon had decided. Time to go home. Lucky bastard, Thomas says without rancor when you show him the discharge. He's changed dramatically from the farm boy who joined with you in '62. Now a sergeant with hard eyes and a scar that pulls his mouth into a permanent half-grimace. War's over anyway. Just mopping up now. Miller is more philosophical. 3 years is enough for any man, he says, helping you pack your meager possessions. You've done your part. Of your original squad, only Miller, Thomas, and you remain. Jenkins didn't survive the wilderness, lost in that terrible burning forest where men shot at muzzle flashes and fought unseeing through underbrush. You never found his body. So many were simply listed as missing after those chaotic days. Others joined your squad, fought alongside you, died or were wounded or simply transferred elsewhere as the great shuffling of men continued through years of war. Their faces blur in your memory now, distinguished more by how they left than who they were. The boy who took a shell fragment through the neck at Cold Harbor. The replacement who lasted 6 hours before typhoid claimed him. The veteran from another regiment who stepped on a mine outside Petersburg. Saying goodbye is both harder and easier than you expected. Hard because these men have been your world for 3 years, a family forged in experiences no outsider could comprehend. Easy because soldiers learn early that attachment is dangerous. Every friend lost tears away a piece of yourself until there's nothing left to give. Right if you can, Thomas says gruffly, shaking your hand with uncharacteristic formality. Stay away from windows, Miller advises with gallows humor. Snipers love targeting veterans who survived the whole damn war. The journey home is disorienting. From the disciplined environment of the regiment, you're suddenly thrust into the chaotic civilian world. Railroad stations crowded with travelers, cities bustling with commerce as if war had been a distant inconvenience rather than a national bloodletting. In Washington, you join hundreds of other discharged soldiers navigating a bureaucratic maze to receive final pay and official papers. The process takes days during which you sleep in boarding houses filled with men like yourself, displaced warriors whose purpose has suddenly evaporated. The conversations in these temporary shelters reveal a universal uncertainty. What now? After years of having every decision made by others, every need, however poorly, provided by the Army, how does one simply resume civilian life? Going back to farming, announces a one-legged artillery sergeant from Ohio. Can still plow with a peg leg. Just got to train the horses not to spook at it. Opening a store, says another veteran, his empty right sleeve pinned neatly to his shoulder. Army taught me about supply. Figure I can apply that to peacetime goods. Some have no plans, no homes to return to. The war consumed everything they left behind. Farms burned, families relocated, opportunities vanished. These men speak vaguely of heading west, finding new beginnings in territories where the war's shadow might not reach. You listen to these discussions, but contribute little. Your own future remains undefined, clouded by the persistent ache in your shoulder and the more insidious pain that has no physical location but seems to permeate your very being. When your turn finally comes at the disbursement office, you receive $103.40, final pay, clothing allowance, and travel stipend combined. 3 years of service reduced to a sum that would barely buy a decent horse in peacetime. Sign here, the clerk says mechanically, pushing a form across the desk. Acknowledges receipt of funds and terminates all claims against the United States government related to your service. You sign, watching your hand form the signature as if it belongs to someone else. That simple act severs the last official connection to your soldier identity. On paper, at least, you are a civilian again. The train journey home takes 3 days, passing through landscapes still bearing the scars of war. Burned out farmhouses, fields lying fallow, bridges hastily rebuilt after strategic destruction. At each stop, soldiers get on or off, some in uniform, others already in civilian clothes, but betrayed by their military bearing or the haunted look common to veterans. You notice how civilian passengers react to your presence, some with gratitude or respect, others with unease as if your proximity to violence might somehow be contagious. A well-dressed businessman changes seats rather than sit across from you, while a matron insists on giving you her basket of baked goods despite your polite refusal. They don't know what to make of us, observes an elderly veteran of both the Mexican and Civil War seated beside you for one leg of the journey. Can't decide if we're heroes or killers or both. Truth is, we're just men who've seen things they can't imagine and hope they never will. The final miles to your hometown pass with increasing anxiety. 3 years have transformed not just you, but potentially everything and everyone you left behind. Letters home, while regular, conveyed only the most sanitized version of your experiences. How do you reconnect with people who knew the person you were, but cannot comprehend the person you've become? The train station is much as you remember it, though a new monument now stands nearby. A simple obelisk bearing the names of local men who didn't return. You scan it automatically, recognizing several names from your old neighborhood. No one meets you at the station. Your arrival date was uncertain, and telegrams are expensive. You shoulder your knapsack, the weight familiar after years of carrying much heavier loads, and begin the mile walk to your family's house. The town seems simultaneously unchanged and utterly different. Buildings stand where you remember them, but signs have changed. New construction has filled empty lots. And the people are engaged in normal activities that now seem alien to you. A woman hangs laundry without scanning the horizon for smoke. Children play without falling silent at approaching footsteps. Men argue over business matters as if such concerns are life and death. You pass the general store where you bought your first pocket knife, the church where you sat through interminable sermons, the school where you learned to read and write. Each landmark exists in double vision, what it was in your memory, what it is now in reality. People glance at you, some with recognition dawning in their eyes, others with the weary look reserved for strangers. Your uniform, worn for the journey home because you own no civilian clothes, marks you as a returning soldier. Several men nod respectfully. A former schoolmate starts to approach, then hesitates, perhaps noting the difference in your bearing or the hardness in your eyes. Your family's house appears around the bend in the road, the familiar two-story clapboard with its sagging porch and crooked chimney. Smoke rises from the kitchen, suggesting someone is home preparing an ordinary meal on an ordinary day that is about to become extraordinary. For a moment, you consider continuing past, walking to the next town, the next state, anywhere but into the inevitable awkwardness of reunion. How do you explain to these people who love you that the person they remember no longer exists? How do you tell them about Miller and Thomas and Jenkins and all the others without revealing the horrors that bound you together? The decision is made for you when the door opens. Your mother emerges, shading her eyes against the afternoon sun, alerted perhaps by some sixth sense that her child approaches. She sees you, freezes for a heartbeat, then runs down the path with a cry that contains both joy and the release of years of fear. The embrace is both comforting and uncomfortable. Comforting in its genuine emotion, uncomfortable in the intimacy you've grown unaccustomed to after years in the masculine world of the army. You return it stiffly at first, then with increasing abandon as something breaks inside you. "You're home," she says, pulling back to study your face with tear-filled eyes. "My boy is home." Boy. The word strikes a discordant note. You haven't been a boy since watching Jenkins bleed out in the wilderness, calling for his mother with his last breath. But you nod, unwilling to correct her in this moment of reunion. The next hours pass in a blur of emotions and introductions. Your father, grayer and more stooped than you remember, pumping your hand with fierce pride. Your younger siblings, some barely recognizable after 3 years of growth, alternately shy and exuberantly curious about your experiences. Neighbors arriving with food and questions and tearful gratitude for your service. Through it all, you maintain the facade they need. The returning hero, sobered by war but essentially unchanged. You answer questions selectively, focusing on the camaraderie and patriotism, omitting the terror and brutality. You accept their gratitude gracefully, though inside you question what exactly you accomplished that deserves such thanks. That night, given your old bedroom, now shared with a younger brother who watches you with undisguised hero worship, sleep eludes you. The bed is too soft after years of ground or wooden bunks. The silence is too complete without the sounds of men coughing, shifting, occasionally crying out from nightmares. The safety is too absolute without the need to maintain constant vigilance. Around midnight, you quietly dress and go outside, seeking comfort in the open air. The stars overhead are the same ones you watched from picket duty, from forced marches, from battlefield bivouacs where the wounded moaned through the night. At least these constants remain, bridging your soldier life and whatever comes next. Couldn't sleep either, huh? The voice startles you. You've grown unaccustomed to being approached without noticing. Turning, you see an older man sitting on a nearby fence, smoking a pipe. Something in his posture signals a fellow veteran before he even speaks further. "Mexican War," he says, confirming your suspicion. "Came home in 48. Couldn't sleep indoors for a month." "How long?" you ask, the question encompassing far more than just the sleeping difficulty. He considers this, tapping his pipe against the fence post. "The dreams, few years. The memories never go away completely. The feeling of not belonging here anymore, that fades mostly. You build a new life around the hole inside you." His frankness is refreshing after hours of well-meaning civilian platitudes. You join him at the fence, accepting when he offers his tobacco pouch. Town looks at us like we're either heroes or madmen. He continues. Truth is somewhere in the middle. We've seen the worst of what men can do, and sometimes we did it ourselves. Can't expect to come back unchanged. My mother keeps calling me her boy, you say, voicing the discomfort that's been building since your return. The man chuckles without humor. My wife did the same. Had to tell her straight out. The boy she married died at Buena Vista. Took time, but she came to know the man who came back instead. You talk through the night. This stranger who isn't a stranger providing the one thing your loving family cannot. Understanding born of similar experience. As dawn approaches, he offers practical advice about navigating civilian life, dealing with unexpected memories, finding purpose after war's cruel clarity. Join the Grand Army of the Republic when they form a local post, he suggests. Being with other veterans helps. Civilians mean well, but they don't understand. The next weeks establish patterns that will define your immediate future. Days are spent helping with the family business, relearning civilian skills, enduring well-intentioned inquiries about your adventures. Nights often find you awake, sometimes walking until exhaustion forces sleep, sometimes writing letters to Thomas and Miller that contain truths you cannot share with those around you. Your shoulder pain continues, sometimes mild, sometimes debilitating. The local doctor, who never saw a battlefield amputation or extracted a bullet while under artillery fire, prescribes ineffective tonics and suggests the pain may be nervous in origin, a diplomatic way of implying it exists primarily in your mind. The nightmares come regularly, tangled relivings of battles, faces of the dead, moments of terror and guilt from 3 years of war. You learn to wake silently, to calm your breathing before it alerts others, to sit in darkness until the images fade enough to attempt sleep again. Civilian clothes feel wrong on your body, the fabric's too soft, the fit too loose after years of uniform. Civilian conversations seem trivial, focused on local gossip and business concerns rather than the life-and-death simplicity of war. Civilian priorities, appearance, social standing, minor slights, strike you as absurdly unimportant after watching men die for higher principles. The neighbor's daughter who wrote to you during the war becomes a bright spot in this difficult transition. Unlike others, she doesn't press for war stories or treat you like a curiosity. She simply walks with you, talks about books and ideas, allows silences to exist without awkward attempts to fill them. You don't have to pretend with me, she says during one such walk. I don't expect you to be who you were before. How can you know who I was before? You ask, genuinely curious. We barely spoke then. She smiles. I watched you more than you realized. But that's not what I mean. No one comes through something like that unchanged. I'd be worried if you seemed exactly the same. This acceptance of your transformed self, without expectation of explanation or performance, creates a space where healing becomes possible. Not the complete erasure of war's effects, but the gradual integration of soldier and civilian identities into something new and sustainable. Summer passes into fall, and with the changing leaves comes news from your former comrades. A letter from Thomas describes the regiment's final operations and his own plans to head west rather than return to his family's farm. Too many ghosts in Ohio, he writes. Need open country where a man isn't reminded of what he's lost with every familiar view. Miller's letter is briefer but more immediately concerning. He's in a veteran's home in Hartford, his old war wounds having finally overcome his remarkable constitution. Between the lines, you read his deteriorating condition and growing isolation. You should go to him, the neighbor's daughter says when you share this news. He was your brother in ways I'll never understand. The journey to Hartford takes 2 days, trains once again carrying you through landscapes that still bear war's scars, though nature has begun the slow work of reclamation. The veteran's home proves to be a former mansion repurposed to house the human wreckage of the nation's great conflict. Miller occupies a small room shared with another veteran. His appearance shocks you, the once sturdy frame now gaunt, the weathered face gray with pain. But his eyes light with genuine pleasure at your arrival. Didn't expect you'd come, he says, voice weaker but still carrying that sardonic tone you remember. Long way to travel for a dying man. You survived the peninsula, Gettysburg, and the wilderness. You reply, falling easily into the bantering tone that served as affection between soldiers. Pretty sure you'll outlive us all out of sheer stubbornness. His laugh turns into a cough, but the moment achieves what you intended, a reconnection to the bond formed through shared hardship. For 3 days, you sit with him, sometimes talking about wartime experiences now safely in the past, sometimes simply providing the companionship that needs no words. On the third night, he asks you to help him outside, wanting to see the stars one more time. You support his frail body to a garden bench where he sits gazing upward with an expression of peace you rarely saw during the war. Funny thing, he says after a long silence. Spent 3 years trying not to die. Now I'm almost looking forward to it. So tired of fighting, you know. You do know, though your own battle is different. Not against physical deterioration, but against the memories and habits that make civilian life so challenging. Wanted to tell you something. Miller continues, his voice stronger as if drawing on reserved energy for important words. You were a good soldier. Not at first. You were green as grass when you showed up. But you learned. Kept your head when others lost theirs. Looked after your squad. Man couldn't ask for a better comrade. The simple praise coming from this man whose respect was so hard-earned means more than all the hero accolades from well-meaning civilians. It acknowledges not just what you endured, but how you conducted yourself through that endurance. Learn from the best. You reply, your voice rough with emotion. Miller snorts. Learn despite the best, more like. Made plenty of mistakes myself. He falls silent, then adds, just one thing I want you to remember after I'm gone. We survived, not just the war. Anyone with luck can do that. We survived with our humanity intact. Saw the worst men can do and didn't become the worst ourselves. That's the real victory. You understand. You nod, understanding completely. Miller dies 3 days later, slipping away quietly in his sleep. A peaceful end that seems almost unfair given the violence that defines so much of his life. You arrange for his burial with his few possessions, including the tattered diary he kept throughout the war which he explicitly left to you. The journey home feels different, a closing of one chapter, the beginning of another. Reading Miller's diary on the train reveals a man more thoughtful, more troubled, and ultimately more hopeful than the stoic exterior he presented to the world. His final entries speak not of battlefield glory, but of his desire for the nation to heal, for the sacrifices to mean something beyond victory or defeat. Returning to your hometown, you find it transformed by autumn, harvest underway, preparations for winter beginning, the rhythms of civilian life continuing as they have for generations before the war and will for generations after. These cycles that once seemed trivial now appear as the very foundation of what you fought to preserve. The neighbor's daughter, Catherine, her name is, though somehow you've thought of her primarily by her relationship to you, meets you at the station. Something in her face suggests a decision has been made during your absence. I've been thinking, she says as you walk together through fallen leaves. About us. About the future. Have you now? You respond, a lightness in your tone that would have been impossible months earlier. Life's too short for hesitation, she continues. We've both seen enough to know that. So I'm asking, would you consider building a life together? Not the life either of us might have had without the war, but something new. Something that acknowledges what's happened but isn't defined by it. The directness of her proposal, so contrary to traditional courtship expectations, reveals how deeply she understands what you need. Not delicate illusions or social performances, but honest communication between equals. I'm not whole. You feel compelled to warn. Parts of me are still out there, buried in Virginia and Pennsylvania. The nightmares might never completely stop. No one comes through life unscathed, she replies. My scars are different from yours, but they exist. I'm not asking for perfection, just partnership. Winter arrives with its crystalline beauty and isolated evenings, so different from the miserable winters of campaign, yet carrying echoes in the way frost forms on window panes or wind moans around chimney corners. You find work that accommodates your injured shoulder, Begin courting Catherine with her parents' cautious blessing, and establish a new routine that incorporates rather than denies your wartime experiences. The nightmares continue, but with decreasing frequency. You still wake sometimes in the grip of terror, momentarily confused about where and when you exist. But recovery comes quicker now, the return to present reality more immediate. An unexpected letter arrives in January. Thomas writing from Nebraska Territory, where he's found work with a surveying company. His words carry a tentative optimism, a sense of possibilities that transcend the destruction you both witnessed. Wide country out here, he writes. Room to breathe, room to forget, maybe even room to build something new. Spring brings two significant developments. First, a local chapter of the Grand Army of the Republic forms, creating a community of veterans who understand the unique challenges of reintegration. Second, you and Catherine announce your engagement, planning a simple ceremony for early summer. The GAR meetings become an essential part of your healing process. Among fellow veterans, you can speak truths that civilians cannot bear. The shared experiences, both traumatic and transcendent, create bonds that require no explanation. Together, you navigate the complex territory between honoring your service and moving beyond it, between remembering the dead and living fully among the living. Your wedding day dawns clear and warm, the kind of perfect June morning that seems to validate the possibility of new beginnings. The ceremony itself is brief, attended by family and close friends, including several veterans who stand with uncomfortable formality in rarely worn suits. Catherine's vows include a line that brings unexpected tears to your eyes. I promise to love both the man you were before the war, the man you became during it, and the man you are still becoming after it. The reception that follows has moments of genuine joy intermixed with inevitable awkwardness as civilian and military worlds attempt integration. You find yourself instinctively grouping guests into categories, those who served and those who didn't, before consciously breaking this pattern, moving between groups, building bridges. Late in the evening, you step outside for a moment of quiet, gazing at stars that have witnessed every human conflict yet continue their indifferent journey across the heavens. Catherine joins you, her hand finding yours in the darkness. Happy? She asks simply. The question deserves honest consideration. Happiness as you once understood it, the uncomplicated emotion of pre-war youth, no longer exists for you. What has replaced it is something more complex. Moments of joy emerging from a background of hard-earned wisdom, appreciation deepened by knowledge of alternatives, peace made meaningful by memories of its absence. Yes, you answer finally. Not the way I once would have defined it, but yes. She nods, understanding, as she so often does, what remains unspoken. Did you ever think, during the worst of it, that you'd be standing here someday? That survival was possible. The question brings memories flooding back. The miserable winter quarters, the terror of battle lines forming, the endless marches through dust and mud, the comrades lost to bullets and disease. Miller's face appears most vividly, his weathered features set in that characteristic expression of sardonic endurance. For sometimes, you admit, not often, but sometimes, there were men who never lost sight of after, who carried pictures of home, who talked about what they'd do when it was over. I think they survived better than those who couldn't see past the next battle. And you? What kept you going? You consider this, searching for the truth beneath convenient answers. At first, just not wanting to die, then not wanting to let down the men beside me. By the end, it was wanting to be worthy of coming back, wanting to be someone who could live in peace again without bringing war back with him. She squeezes your hand. You are. Not because you've forgotten or because you pretend it didn't change you, but because you found a way to carry it without being crushed by it. As you stand there in the gathering darkness, the sounds of celebration continuing behind you, you realize something profound. The question that has haunted you since discharge, could you survive as a Civil War soldier, was only half the question. The full version, the one that truly matters is, could you survive as a Civil War soldier and then learn to live as something else? The answer you now understand is yes. Not easily, not perfectly, not without scars both visible and hidden. But yes, survival extends beyond the battlefield, beyond the hospital, beyond the moment of discharge. It encompasses this harder, quieter struggle to reconcile what was with what is, to build something meaningful from experiences that threaten to destroy everything meaningful. Miller's words return to you. We survived with our humanity intact. That's the real victory. Looking at the woman beside you, at the life stretching before you, at the hard-won wisdom that now informs your understanding of both joy and suffering, you silently acknowledge the truth of his statement. The greatest victory was never about armies or flags or territory. It was about returning, not unchanged but undefeated in spirit, to build rather than destroy, to love rather than hate, to live fully in peace after seeing the worst of war. Come back inside, Catherine says softly. There are people waiting for us. You follow her toward the light and sound of celebration, leaving the battlefield memories in the darkness where they belong. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but no longer controlling the path ahead. For the first time since your discharge, perhaps the first time since your enlistment, you feel not just like a survivor, but like someone who might genuinely thrive in this hard-won peace. The question has been answered. You could survive as a Civil War soldier. And more importantly, you can survive as the man who comes after, carrying those experiences into a future limited only by your willingness to embrace it.